So I've talked about Prime a lot now, and that series is still ongoing. I've also talked about its sequel, its maybe sequel, and all of the things I feel like they're doing right and wrong, but I haven't talked about its spin-off yet, and honestly, I wasn't going to. It was actually because of one of you wonderful people requesting it that I decided to add this to my rotation videos. Which, if you guys are interested, well, that is a thing that I do, just in general. If you guys do find the resources to pledge at least $1 to my Patreon, you can add anything you want to my rotation, and I will even move it up the list for you. Just figured I'd add that in, since I don't show myself very often. Honestly, I don't have a ton to say about the Rescue Bots, plots, or characters. I don't watch the show all that often. So this video is going to be a little briefer than my videos on RID and Cyberverse, but I do have a bit to say about the show itself, about its production and its purpose and all of that jazz. Not to be confused with the Transformer jazz. But in case you guys are worried about my opinion for one reason or another, short review, I do think this is a good show, especially for what it is. Kind of like RID. I think it's a good show for what it is. That does mean, however, that I don't think that Rescue Bots is a good, all-purpose, for-everyone Transformers show the way that Prime was. And I don't know if I got it across in my RID review, but that's okay. It's okay for Transformers to hyper-focus on its own demographic audience, which is what Rescue Bots does at the end of the day. Rescue Bots is a kids show. It's a show for preschool-age kids and a little up, I would say, that is primarily based on the Rescue Bots toy line, which is a toy line of super simplified Transformers, which transform mostly through spring-loaded mechanisms, making their transformations one step. It's an offshoot, I think, of the Robot Heroes toy line, which is also focused at very young kids. This is supposed to be a kid's first introduction to the Transformers brand, and as that, it's fantastic. Again, in general, I don't think this is like a wonderful show or anything, but as someone who likes kids media in general, I'm not opposed to watching it on occasion. To talk briefly about the toy line, I actually kind of like it. I like more complex Transformers that have more detail on them, fine. But every once in a while, I like to just play with a toy that is easy to play with. And the Rescue Bots toys manage to be that and still look good. And because they're so simplified, and because most of them are the same size, or maybe only slightly larger or slightly smaller than the others of their line, they're shaped mostly the same. They are accompanied in the toy line with playsets that they can interact with very easily. And yes, because this is a Prime spin-off, I did buy some of the figures of some of the characters from the show. I displayed them on my Transformers Prime shelf until the Prime characters became too numerous and I had to dedicate the entire shelf only to them. Like the show, they're not, like, amazing. They're not the kinds of Transformers toys that a collector is going to go after just to collect them. But they're perfectly appropriate for what they are, and in fact they go one step beyond that to being great for what they are. They are more interesting and more complex than they need to be. They're more detailed than they need to be to sell to young kids. The designers of these toys took the concept of these toys and did everything they possibly could within that concept, and I really appreciate that. And that's how I define the show, too. The Rescue Bots show sees a group of Cybertronians awakening in a town called, I just looked this up, Griffin Rock. It's called Griffin Rock. And allying themselves with the Burns family, a family that's very active in the protection and the management of this town. The family patriarch, for example, is, I think, like police chief or something of the town. I think it's his daughter, is like a search and rescue chief. These are good people who care about the well-being of the people in this town, and so these Autobots end up becoming rescue workers alongside them, under the cover of being super secret rescue technology developed on Earth. So, at least for a while. I think it changes later on the show, but I could be wrong about that. At least for a while, though, they have to pretend to be just regular robots when out in public. There's no Decepticons to fight, there's no villains to be defeated, there's actually no real combat in this show whatsoever, just rescue scenarios that they have to overcome. Puzzles to be overcome, more or less. That always have intelligent setups and intelligent resolutions, requiring teamwork and actual thought from our characters. And while none of the characters from this show ever cross over onto Prime, characters from Prime cross over onto this show, and this is actually the primary reason why I think that Cyberverse, even if it isn't entirely in continuity with Prime and RID, could still be reconfigured to be in continuity with them anyway, because when the characters from Prime came over to this show, they came over and appeared in the style of this show. Their designs were completely different. So already within the aligned continuity, we have examples of the continuity being fudged a little bit going from one show to the next. Despite that, though, when characters from Prime came over to this show, they worked. They fit with this cast very well and fell into the role of a rescue character very well. I particularly like the few times that I've seen Optimus crossover onto the show. I thought he was really good in it. In fact, that's one of the things I like most about this show is character work. The characters in this are a little saccharine. They're characters meant to be absorbable by little kids, so the drama between them isn't like super dark or complex, but there is drama between them. There are characters who have to learn and grow, who aren't at their best when the show first starts out. I think his name is Heatwave, for example, the kind of lead rescue bot, is kind of a hot-headed dick to start out, and he develops into a genuinely heroic character. Like the toy line went above and beyond, this show goes above and beyond to deliver something of higher quality than what it needed to be to sell to its demographic. Kids were going to be fine with this show just so long as it had cool-looking robots doing cool-looking things, but they actually try to tell intelligent stories. They try to teach you critical thinking skills and puzzle solving and just kind of in general how to be a good, thoughtful person with the stories of the show without them actually being message episodes. Like, they kind of are, but they're also not. They're not written like message episodes. They just have good morals to them, if that makes any sense. The cast of the show has grown over time. They've introduced new Transformers characters without really screwing up the dynamic of the show at all. The show even squeezes in some comedy, which manages to be pretty on point most of the time. And while it's not really a show for me, it's not one that I'd sit down and binge all the way through like I would Prime, for example. It's definitely a show that I don't mind watching. If I'm scrolling through the channels and this just happens to be one of the shows that I fall upon, there's a good chance I'll stop at it, and it's definitely one that I'll watch with my nieces and nephews. In fact, I would say if you're a Transformers fan and you have young kids in your lives and you haven't checked out this show yet, you should, just for their benefit. I think they'd like it a lot, and it's the kind of thing that you probably wouldn't mind watching along with them. I even think Bumblebee became like a semi-regular character for a while too, which if that is true, that's kind of interesting. If not, then
I've made a terrible fool of myself, which isn't unusual.
Because like I said, again, this isn't a show that I've watched all the way through, but it is a show that I'm really glad is on television, and it is still technically on television. This series ended after 4 seasons, but a new sequel series, Transformers Rescue Bots Academy, has already been announced, and yes, I will do a 2 cents video on that once it drops. I think what this review is going to come down to is if you are a Transformers fan and haven't checked this show out, just like Robots in Disguise, I think you should check this one out. It might be something that you end up enjoying more than you thought you would. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of Transformers Rescue Bots? If you have seen it, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below or over on my Discord. Link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.